Hello friends and welcome to Fire Emblem Discussion. Today we're going to be looking at your comments and thoughts from the video Do Stat Growths Matter? And we're going to come to a conclusion as to how we feel about this, and essentially a conclusion on how I feel about this by using your comments and my own thoughts and experience, and we'll have a good conversation today. Normally I would start with the highest rated comment or the comment with the most likes, but that comment really sums up my thoughts today, so we're going to skip that for now and leave it for last. But we will be starting with the next highest rated comment from Dark Light, who says, "Growths matter, but an experienced player can get around them. Like the whole Dimitri Battalion Vantage Wrath combo. How much stats do you really need when you're going to crit everything?" Now, I understand where you're coming from, Dark Light, and you're referencing the 0% growth run that Rangor's doing, or has finished at this point, I believe. And yeah, it's valid. Experienced players can get around bad growths on units or no growths at all. But I do appreciate that you say that growths matter in the beginning. It's a skill level thing, and a few other people mentioned this as well, but it really is a skill level thing. Growths lower the barrier of entry for this series. If there were 0 growths for the entire game or whatever, or just at base, is it beatable? Yes. Is it a lot harder? It takes a lot more planning and all that stuff? Of course. So, in a way, I do think, that's a thought. Yeah, in a way, growths lower the barrier of entry into the series. And I appreciate that personally. Next, we'll go to Evan Smith, who says, "Growths matter in every game, even Sacred Stone's easy mode. Just much less so in games like that than in a game like Three Houses." And from Swords Master, we have this. She says, "Growths matter, but it also depends on the game. In Binding Blade, I think bases tend to be a little bit more important, more so for pre-promotes. Hard mode especially, where Percival, Milady, and Rutger all really shine, and Marcus is your savior for the first part of the game. Then there are the Archers, Armor Knights, and Sophia, who cannot be salvaged even by their growths. I've been playing Binding Blade a lot recently, and it is a game where bases are good as growths aren't always very high, save for Fae." So those two comments both touch on this, but it really depends on the game where growths matter more than others. So, you think about 36776, where every character's stat, all the stat caps are 20, which is relatively low for the series. And by relatively, I mean that's basically as low as it gets for the series, is stat caps of 20. You don't have as much room to grow as you do in a game like, say, Awakening, where the stat caps are in the 40s and 50s, right? So it depends on the game. I appreciate that point of view from those two. All right, next from Ninja Bunny, he says, "A lot of people will say that it's a balancing act between availability, base stats, and stat growths. The more available a unit is, the less base stats matter and the more growth rates matter, and vice versa. Now, it's important to stress that Fire Emblem isn't about optimal play. Every Fire Emblem game is heavily balanced around unoptimized play, and as such, the gameplay of Fire Emblem becomes very open-ended. This leads to people being able to create the game that they want, and is the most important pillar to Fire Emblem." Ninja Bunny brings up an interesting point. Basically, play the way you want. I do think that plays into what I said about growths lowering the skill barrier, allowing more people to pick up a game and play it. Now, finally, we're going to finish with the top rated comment, which comes from Mason Ellawood, who says, "It depends heavily on the context. Just because people can beat entire games using 0 growth patches doesn't necessarily mean they don't matter, because that's a very small portion of the player base using insane planning and preparation to do so. It doesn't represent most players or their skill level, preferences, or play style. It can be done, but it's an insane level of difficulty I don't think most players would enjoy. Any Fire Emblem can be beaten by refusing to use the best units, items, or spells, but that doesn't mean they stop being the best units, items, and spells, if that makes sense. The best units in the series are the ones that make the games a lot easier. Does that mean they don't matter if you can beat those entries without them? Of course not." I'm going to skip through the bulk of your comment. Go read this comment. I'll leave it on screen too if you want to take a read. It's pretty long though. It's really good. And I'm just going to finish with the TLDR. It says, gross matter is just important to note the context between each game, each unit, and each player playstyle, rather than weigh them as a whole. Now, I agree with Mason, 100% here. It all depends on the player. Like if you're doing like any challenge runs or anything, there's so many variables that go into it that do gross matter. And I think I lean towards overall, of course they matter. It's just how the game is made, it's how the game is intended to be played is with these characters that grow over time. But you can beat the game without them. And if that to you means gross don't matter, then they don't matter. However, I just think that means some players are really, really good and are willing to be patient and take the time to figure out how to do it. But yeah, that'll be it for today. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to leave even more of your thoughts in the comments and stuff. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe for more of this content, and I'll catch you next time.